Here's what's coming up on your horizon. Memorial Day means different things to different people. For some, it's the start of summer, and for others, a welcome day off from work. But for the men and women who serve our country, Memorial Day often holds a completely different significance. Today, we hope to honor those who have served in uniform and have sacrificed so much for our country. Stay with us for Oklahoma Horizon.
Oklahoma Horizon is made possible by the Oklahoma Department of Career and Technology Education.
Oklahoma's investment in career tech provides more than nationally recognized technology education and training. It produces solid financial returns for the state's economic future. Oklahoma Career Tech, elevating our economy.
And the Oklahoma Department of Agriculture, Food, and Forestry, helping good people grow good things. And now, from the Career Tech Studios in Stillwater, here's your host, Rob McClendon.
Hello everyone, thanks for joining us here on Horizon. Well, approximately every 3 minutes, a memory of World War II fades away. Even the bravest of warriors must yield to the inalterable march of time. It has now been 70 years since the men and women of what has been called our greatest generation fought and won the largest conflict our world has ever known. And that's where we begin, with the Oklahoma farm boy off at college by the name of Jack Givens, whose life, like many boys of his generation, changed dramatically on December 7th, 1941.
It was on a Sunday, and I remember hearing on the radio. Of course, they were still sinking ships and everything else at that time, but we had no idea because we were in ROTC.
In ROTC, Jack went on to officer candidate school, only to find himself on the beaches of Normandy, leading a platoon fighting their way through France.
We got pinned down with this rifle fire, and as a mortar shell came and went back behind us a couple hundred yards, and then as another one came, and it went in front of us. So I told the sergeant, the next round's coming right on the top of us. And I said, you better hit the ground. And the next round came, it just decimated our unit. We were out in front. I'd been hit in the face here. This is just a fragment of the shell hit.
Wounded and far away from home, young Jack was hospitalized for months.
I was really feeling sorry for myself, what I was going to look like. And I heard all this moaning and groaning in there, so I walked in there. And here's guys with their legs blown off and their arms blown off and all that. So I no longer felt sorry for myself.
Sent back to the front lines, Givens likes to tell people he walked and crawled his way across Europe, dodging German bullets.
You could have got killed so many times that you didn't, you know. And I felt watched over, I guarantee you for sure.
Wounded twice more, Mr. Givens earned 3 Purple Hearts and a Bronze Star before his war ended on a mission behind German lines in the early spring of 1945.
And the Americans were going to go around this mountain with tanks, and we'd take this town and cut the Autobahn and hold it. Well, this was like midnight, and we got over this hill there, and there was a guard there, but he was asleep. He was leaning up against a chair. He didn't know there was any Americans anywhere close by. And then we captured over 200 there just inside this building, didn't kill anybody. And we decided to make our headquarters the biggest building we'd find there, and it was like a 5 or 6 story hotel is what it was.
But the next morning, Givens found his company surrounded by German troops, fighting their way out, no longer an option.
And we threw down hand grenades in this open half-track, but then they called in a tank, brought a big tank in there, and they was just blowing the sides out. So I told them then to everybody, we just had like 30 men left out of our company by that time. I said, just go ahead and surrender.
But once captured, Jack Givens could even make a friend with his enemies.
They were taking me up to their commander up there. While he was interrogating me, and he said, where'd you get that hole in your face there? And I said, there's a place called Filet Gap in Normandy. And he pulled his boot off and pulled up his pants leg, and he had a scar down about 10 inches long down this leg. He said, I got that at the Filet Gap just for, we were the ones that was right next to you. And he just laughed about that.
Mr. Givens was more than happy to leave the war behind, finishing up college and teaching ag education in California, until the opportunity to come back home and farm. According to the U.S. Veterans Administration, World War II veterans are dying off at a rate of 492 a day. Of the 16 million Americans who served in World War II, only 1 million now survive, with roughly 11,000 living in Oklahoma. When we return, I sat down with the best-selling author James Bradley to find out why it took 50 years to tell the personal story of his father and the raising of the American flag on Iwo Jima.
You're watching Oklahoma Horizon, featuring some of the good things that are happening in the great state of Oklahoma.
Probably no image is more iconic for Americans than the raising of the flag on Iwo Jima. Yet it took 50 years for the personal side of that story to be told. I was able to sit down with James Bradley, the author of Flags of Our Fathers, 70 years to the week of when his dad climbed that jagged mountaintop on a forgotten island in the middle of the Pacific and was thrust into history. With some background, here's Randy Barth.
You get it?
I don't know. I wish I could have seen their faces.
It's the photo recognized around the world.
The right picture can win or lose a war.
You're going to want to see this.
The victory at Iwo Jima, immortalized in black and white. An event in history told by the son of a Navy corpsman. James Bradley authored a book titled The Flags of Our Fathers, a New York Times bestseller for 46 weeks. It was later made into a movie. The leading character, his father. Bradley's work has been praised for his realistic portrayals. The book and movie tell the story in a before, during, and after format, showing us a real-life account of that fateful battle. R. Rob McClendon sat down with Bradley to discuss the photo, the book, and an American hero.
I can honestly not think of any more of an iconic image than the raising of the flag on Iwo Jima. Why do you think it has become so much of America's collective consciousness?
I'm not sure. I'm one of the few who doesn't speculate why the photo is so beloved by Americans, but I know that the second it appeared, I mean, it was front page New York Times, front page newspapers all across the country. The public went nuts. There were tens of thousands of requests for reprints of the photos. It's the most reproduced photo in history. So I don't know why that happened, but it happened. It's like, why is Marilyn Monroe so popular? You know, it's difficult to explain, but there's just something there.
Now, the boys that raised that flag, the Marines, and your father, the Navy corpsman, were all young men. But, you know, growing up in your father's house, this wasn't a typical conversation, was it?
No. In the family house, in the cottage, and in my dad's business, there were no flag-raising photos anywhere. If my dad had walked into one of our dorms at college and seen a flag-raising photo, he probably would have walked out. It just was not part of his existence. He saw the heroes of Iwo Jima as the guys who didn't come back. So to be called a hero for doing something that was not particularly heroic didn't make a lot of sense to him.
But the simple fact that he had raised that flag, it thrust him into the spotlight. How did he react to that?
Well, his first press conference was in the Oval Office with Harry Truman, and he wrote back to his mother that he hopes no one in Wisconsin sees the photos because his acne was so bad. These were just kids, and they were just in from a horrible battle and suffering from various levels of PTSD.
You know, before you ever put pen to paper, this has certainly been a well-told story. Movies have been made. People have written about the flag raising. Why did you decide to tell your father's story and the story of the men that he was with?
Because I was the only one who knew the stories. There had been a lot written and done about Iwo Jima, but nobody knew about the flag raisers. And I knew that because I grew up with one of the guys. You know, I knew how much the public did not know, because I would call my mother and tell her a fact. She learned about what happened to my dad on Iwo Jima from me. So even the wife of a flag raiser did not know these things that I was finding out, so I knew that the public didn't know.
Is that a common experience, that people that have been through the maw of battle and that have seen it all, that they want to get past it sometimes? Have you found that in the other interviews that you've done?
Well, what I found is the closer you're to a massacre, your friends screaming to death, guys dying all around you, the more you're not going to talk about it. You don't want to raise those devils in your dreams. You want to get over it. You want to get rid of it. And you don't want to cry in front of your kids.
You have also written the book called Flyboys, which one of the people in that book is our 41st president. Why did you decide to write that book?
Well, I didn't really decide. Someone called me with the story, and he said, at the moment your dad was putting up a flag, flyboys were being beheaded on the next island to Iwo Jima, and this is all secret. The mothers and fathers were not told what happened to their sons. And a guy wanted me to get the story out, and it turns out George Bush was the only guy who escaped, who got away in this story. It's amazing. The guy who becomes the president of the United States gets away.
Now, you were fairly surprised from taking it from your talk that I just listened to, that while this story was so moving, so much of Americana, that really the publishers didn't initially show any interest whatsoever.
Well, to the publishers, it was an old black and white photo. And, you know, at that time, if you looked on the internet, which was fairly new at that time, like 1995, there were like over 110,000 references to Iwo Jima on the internet. Maybe now there's millions. But the publishers just said, you know, this story's been told. It's an old story. There's a number of books about Iwo Jima, but there were no books about the guys in the photo. And finally, a publisher at Bantam Books understood that, and the book took off.
Do you think there's any lessons that we can take away as a society here in the States? Because we have people returning from war right now, that from the stories that you were told about World War II, that we can take away and use with the people that are coming back today?
I think that, you know, the story of Ira Hayes with his post-traumatic stress syndrome, I mean, we still don't know much about PTSD, and the only way we can stop it is stop sending these boys overseas into that situation.
Sure, sure. And once again, Ira Hayes, one of the 3 survivors, Ira Hayes, a Native American who truly came back and froze to death later in life because he was an alcoholic and really never could get past the traumas that he'd seen.
Yeah. Just Iwo Jima was in his mind all the time.
You've just finished another novel. Tell us about that.
I just published The China Mirage, and it's about Franklin Delano Roosevelt in China. Many people don't realize that Franklin Delano Roosevelt's grandfather, Warren Delano, was the American opium king of China, and that the money that supported President Franklin Delano Roosevelt's lifestyle came from opium sales in the 19th century. And Roosevelt felt he had a special insight into China, and this book shows how Roosevelt dealt with China and the mistakes we made in Asia that later we repeated in Vietnam.
And you personally have an interest in Asia. You have a foundation set up?
I have a foundation that sends kids to Asia to go to school. I went to 1 year of university in Japan, so I benefited from that, and I've traveled all over Asia, and I think it's a good idea that we start to get to know each other off the battlefield and make the Pacific truly a ocean of peace.
Did your father have any reaction when you went to school in Japan?
I went to the University of Notre Dame. I called my dad after a few months, said, "Dad, there's a program in Tokyo. I'd like to go to it." He said, "Okay." Never discussed it. It was just an okay.
Well, Mr. Bradley, I certainly appreciate the time. I will leave you with really one last question from all the people that you've talked to. all the people that have told you about war, are there any words of wisdom that you'd have?
Words of wisdom, I'm not very good at that, but I took former President George Herbert Walker Bush back to Chichijima where he was shot down. I introduced him to Japanese who were going to cut his head off if they had captured him that day, and they were enemies at 21. When they were in their 80s, I saw them hug and cry, and I learned something about this funny thing called war.
James Bradley, thank you so much. Now I was able to sit down with Mr. Bradley thanks to the Tulsa Town Hall, who had brought the author into the state for their speaker series. Now, if you'd like to see more stories of Oklahomans who served their country bravely, we have arranged them under our value-added section at okhorizon.com. There, you'll meet the Oklahoman who was the first American to see the atomic explosion over Hiroshima, who says his first and only thought was,
the war's over and I'm going to get to go home.
We also have one of my favorite stories, that of the Marine whose love of his life helped him reunite a family who lost their son in the jungles of Vietnam.
They haven't seen or heard of him, heard from him since 1968.
We also have the story of the Gulf War veteran who returned to the safety of home only to find himself inside the Murrah Federal Building on April 19th, 1995.
And I thought it was my lucky day because it was about 9 o'clock in the morning and I had gotten a front row parking spot.
And we recognize the Oklahoma-based organization called Folds of Honor that gives back to the families of those who have given their all.
The Folds of Honor Foundation has awarded nearly 2,500 scholarships, and those spouses and children are represented in all 50 states across this great nation.
Again, to see any of these stories, just head to okhorizon.com and look under our value-added section.
Still to come on Oklahoma Horizon, picking up the pieces from May's storms. But first, the new Cyber Patriots.
The battlefield of today is not just on foreign land. Online attacks are a growing threat for the United States. Joining me now is our Courtney May.
Several tech centers across the state teach cybersecurity programs, but one in particular has qualified the past 2 years for what is the Super Bowl of cybersecurity.
It's the future of cybersecurity. High school students learning to defend our nation's networks against cyber attack.
I really didn't know anything about computers or computer security. I started out as a little country boy and, I didn't know anything about this really. And when I started out, I learned more things about computers, and I learned working together really heightens your senses, and it brings everybody together.
John Cargill is a member of Central Technology Center's Cyber Patriot team that traveled to nationals in Washington, D.C., competing against teams from around the world to secure computer networks against intruders.
They have to really come together and work as a team to be able to achieve doing well on these competitions. Otherwise, if they try to stay individualized, they won't get anything done. There's just too much work.
Dustin Ford is the Cyber Patriot coach at Central Technology Center and says the students will learn how to fix network vulnerabilities.
They will get in-depth detail on Windows security, Linux security, network security, and then we're even throwing in a little bit of forensics.
And as threats continue to evolve in the cyber world, understanding cybersecurity is critical to securing our nation's future. Cyber Patriot student Connor Henley.
You got to understand, being in Cyber Patriot, just all the nitpicky details that go into what makes it work, like what allows you to log in, what confirms your password. If someone puts in a password, what tells it that that's wrong?
And for the second year in a row, Central Tech's Cyber Patriot team qualified for the national competition.
As soon as we walked there, their mouths just dropped open. It was like, whoa, it's like, you weren't joking, this is really that big, it's that impressive. And so it was one of those things that we kept saying, stay focused on what you know to do, and as long as you keep going through that, by the time the times comes out, we'll end up doing just fine.
Out of 2,100 teams beginning in round one, only the top 1% qualifies for nationals.
Everybody's just really awesome in the field. I got to meet some great people and talk to them and learn different things.
A competition, creating a career path without an end.
There will always be a need for cybersecurity because once you fix something, someone creates another way to break it. And so you got to go back in there and fix it again. So there's always a job out there for someone.
Cyber Patriot, building a workforce to defend and protect the nation's networks against cyber attack.
And Cyber Patriot's biggest sponsor, Northrop Grumman, is helping tomorrow's cyber defenders further their education by awarding nearly $50,000 in scholarships.
So I am curious, what are the job prospects for these students once they complete the program?
These students can be computer system analysts, IT specialists, or even computer programmers. And really the question isn't who's hiring, it's who's not hiring. And with technology advancing and us relying on computers more and more, the need for cyber talent outpaces the supply.
Well, certainly a neat program. Thank you so much, Court.
You're welcome, Rob.
Well, helping veterans find employment is the goal of an upcoming Military Connection event. A hiring event is scheduled for July 16th at Oakwood Mall in Enid. The entire day is open for U.S. military veterans, transitioning service members, and Guard and Reserve members. Hiring event is also open to the general public in the afternoon. Now, to register to be matched with a prospective employer, just head to okmilitaryconnection.com, which we also have a link to on our website. Want to share something you've seen here today? Well, all of our episodes are streaming on our YouTube channel at Oklahoma Horizon TV, or you can subscribe to our weekly free podcasts on iTunes. On May 31st, 2013, a mile-wide tornado hit just west of Oklahoma City, wiping out Canadian Valley Technology Center and destroying everything in its path. And in the 2 years since then, that school has not lost a beat in its journey back. Here's our J.D. Roseman.
Well, Rob, today I'm at Canadian Valley Technology Center in El Reno, and for the past 2 years, classes have been spread out across the district. But today, they're rebuilding to bring them home.
When a friend told us about OKC West being wiped out, my next question was, what about the school?
Shocked and confused.
I was thinking, what am I going to do? Where do I go to work?
And to Colleen Dill, she lost a lot more than just her classroom.
It's like you lost your home because you technically do spend more time here, and we are a family here, just like your family at home.
A complete loss. And for Amy Simmer, no place to go.
It was unreal, unbelievable.
Then the real work began. Over the summer, Canadian Valley staff turned a one-time car dealership into a temporary home. And while classes have been taking place in Yukon, work here is allowing a state-of-the-art facility to take shape.
It was a very, very special day for us, and a very special day for the citizens and taxpayers of Canadian Grady County, actually. So.
A journey that Canadian Valley Greg Winters says would not have been possible if it wasn't for its faculty and staff.
We have just an incredible staff here at Canadian Valley that have put in many, many, many hundreds and hundreds of hours.
All the while ensuring the students at Canadian Valley learn the skills needed to help them enter the workforce.
It's really gone by fast, and I know it's been a long process, but we are ready. I think I can speak for all of us. We are ready.
Turning devastation into determination. To helping educate Oklahomans through the good times and the bad. Now, work here was made possible by Canadian County voters who approved a bond issue in March of 2014.
So, JD, how long do you think it will take to get this project completed?
Well, obviously the tornado destroyed a huge portion of this campus, and rebuilding isn't going to take place overnight. When I spoke with Greg Winters, he said he hopes to have the campus up and running by fall of 2016.
All right. Thank you so much, JD.
You're welcome, Rob.
You can keep up with us throughout the week. Just head to okhorizon.com, where you can see more of any of our stories, read our reporters' behind-the-scenes blogs, see what others are saying about us on Twitter, and face the facts with our regular updates. So reach out and touch us anywhere and anytime. Next time on Oklahoma Horizon, we look at second chances for dogs no one wanted and the people who work with them behind bars.
They get softer and are a lot more responsible, a lot more careful, and then they start getting that back to that hope that, you know, if I keep doing things right for a few years, I've got a chance to get out of here maybe.
The Dogs of Lexington on Oklahoma Show for the Heartland, Oklahoma Horizon. Thanks for including us as part of your day. I'm Ron McClendon. Hope to see you back here next week.
Horizon is made possible by the Oklahoma Department of Career and Technology Education and the Oklahoma Department of Agriculture, Food, and Forestry, helping good people grow good things. Thank you for watching Oklahoma Horizon.